If a war broke out tomorrow, the West would run out of ammunition primer long before it ran out of soldiers. And the reason is a dull gray metal you have probably never heard of, called antimony. It is not glamorous. It does not glow on a periodic table poster or feature in headlines about chips and batteries. Yet without it, the primer that ignites a cartridge fails, and a rifle becomes a metal stick. Antimony sits inside almost every bullet the West manufactures, inside the night vision scopes soldiers wear, inside the hardened alloys of artillery shells, and inside the physics packages of nuclear weapons. And here is the uncomfortable part. One country controls the supply. That country is China. It mines roughly 56% of the world's antimony and refines an even larger share of what everyone else digs up. The raw ore might come from somewhere else, but the processing that turns it into usable metal happens, overwhelmingly, inside Chinese facilities. So why can't the West simply switch to something else? Because antimony does things almost nothing else does, and it does them cheaply. In ammunition, it hardens soft lead alloys so a bullet holds its shape and a primer ignites reliably every single time. It is the backbone of infrared technology, the invisible light that lets a soldier see in total darkness. Antimony compounds sit at the heart of the detectors inside thermal imaging and night vision, and there is no drop-in replacement waiting on a shelf. It also plays a role in the nuclear stockpile, where its properties matter to the precise engineering inside a warhead. And beyond weapons, it turns up in semiconductors, in flame retardants, and in the electrolytes of certain large-scale batteries. It is quiet, everywhere, and hard to swap out. For decades, this dependence sat in the background, unexamined, because supply was cheap and steady. Then, in 2024, Beijing decided to remind the world exactly how much leverage it held. In September of that year, China introduced export controls on antimony, requiring special licenses to ship it abroad. On paper, it was framed as national security housekeeping. In practice, it was a hand tightening slowly around a valve that the rest of the world relied upon. Then came the harder move. In December, China banned exports of antimony to the United States outright, specifically citing military end uses. The effect was not gradual, it was a cliff. American imports of antimony from China fell by roughly 97% almost overnight. The number is worth sitting with. Nearly the entire flow, gone in a single policy stroke. And with supply choked, the price did what prices do when panic meets scarcity. It tripled. A metal that had traded quietly for years suddenly became one of the most expensive strategic materials on the planet. And buyers who had never thought twice about antimony were now scrambling to find a single ton of it. And then a story surfaced that felt almost cinematic. An Australian shipment of antimony, bound for a Western buyer, arrived at a Chinese port for transit. It did not continue on its way. The cargo was held. Weeks later, when it was finally sent back, the shipment returned with its seals broken. A quiet, deniable message sent not through diplomats, but through a tampered container on a dock. So how does the West dig itself out of this? The honest answer is slowly and at great cost. You cannot conjure a mine or a refinery in a quarter. These are projects measured in years and permits, not weeks. The most talked about hope sits in the mountains of Idaho, at a site called Stibnite. It once produced antimony during the Second World War, and now a company is racing to reopen it as a domestic source. But even in the best case, meaningful output is still years away. In the meantime, the West is stockpiling what it can, hunting for antimony in old mine tailings, and funding recycling that might reclaim the metal already sitting inside scrapped batteries and alloys. None of it yet comes close to replacing what Beijing can turn off with a signature. And here is the twist that most headlines missed. In November of 2025, China suspended the ban until November of 2026. On the surface, a de-escalation, a step back from the brink. But read it carefully. A suspension is not a repeal. The controls were not dismantled. They were paused. The legal machinery that shut off the flow is still loaded, still on the books, ready to be reactivated the moment relations sour again. And crucially, the ban on antimony for military end uses stayed in place. So the paused version is aimed at civilian trade. The part that touches ammunition, night vision, and warheads remains firmly closed. Antimony is a lesson in how modern power really works. Not through the loud weapons everyone can see, but through the dull, unglamorous inputs that sit unnoticed until the day they vanish. A single gray metal, controlled by a single country, threaded through nearly everything the West depends on to fight. The West did not run out of soldiers. It ran out of time to notice the valve. And whether that valve stays open or closes again is a decision that no longer rests in Western hands.
If you found this deep dive valuable, hit the like button, drop a comment below on what tech mystery we should decode next, and subscribe to never miss an episode.